key moment to look at in 10 seconds at
Attention all flight crew
T-minus
members,
40.
this is the final go-no-go poll for operations. Raptor 1, Raptor, let's go. Raptor 2,
Go.
Stage
And
1,
we flew right through that.
Stage 2, go. Flight directors go for launch. Flight directors go for launch.
All right, we're now T-minus 20 seconds until liftoff of Starship Flight 6.
9,
This will mark our second
7,
attempt to
6,
catch the
5,
Super Heavy booster
4,
at the launch
3,
tower.
2,
Well,
1, top. Allumage 2 ESR, décollage.
Back to you.
Ship engine startup.
Stage separation.
Booster respect burn.
Alien 0, 30 seconds till catch decision.
Confirm 30 seconds to make that decision.
10 seconds till catch decision.
Hot stage separation confirmed.
Flight directors go for booster return. Operator go vote is set true. We are go for catch.
Go for
Coming in hot.
And we have a go
booster
for auto sequence start. Discovery's onboard computers have primary control of all the vehicle's critical functions. T-minus 17 seconds and counting. 15, 12, 11, 10,
I can't wait for us to hear the sonic
8, 7,
Booster landing burn startup.
Commanded start, 2, 1, booster ignition, and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Discovery, returning to the space station, paving the way for future missions beyond.
Booster now hovering as it aligns with the tower for catch.
Booster coming in.
See those chops
Get
down
ready
to,
for that boom, Kate.
down to 3.
Super heavy booster.
Villa has caught the booster.
Ship avionics power telemetry nominal.
Starship has entered the atmosphere. Starship is approaching the peak heating phase of entry.
Landing bridge startup.
Starship is off target. Starship has landed.
Bonjour, bienvenue sur ce live. On est aujourd'hui en train de couvrir le retour de la mission Crew 9. Oh.
Configuration change for Dragon is complete. We have closed that nose cone. This is the last physical change that Dragon undergoes prior to re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. It's important that nose cone is completely closed because underneath it is not only where the 4 forward Draco thrusters are located, great news there, but it's also because that is where
Désolé, il se peut que je vais beaucoup tousser durant ce live. Bon là, ils viennent de perdre la communication avec attendez. Pourquoi genre
and we reuse them on future space flights. We want to make sure that all of the integrity of that hardware remains intact. So that nose cone, but it's also because that is where the forward hatch is located. We're going to start hatch that is utilized for the crew to ingress and egress from the station while it is docked on board. And since our capsules are flight proven, and we reuse them on future space flights, we want to make sure that all of the integrity of that hardware remains intact. So that nose cone is successfully closed, and we're going to start moving pretty quickly here. As I mentioned before, we'll go through loss of signal. We'll get that signal back several minutes later, and then we'll see the parachute.
Donc là, ils viennent de perdre le signal avec la capsule. La capsule Dragon, ils viennent de perdre le signal avec. Donc là, ça veut dire que la capsule est en ce moment en rentrée atmosphérique. C'est quoi ça? On va enlever les sous-titres.
So if you are in the southern tip of Mexico, you might have the opportunity to see Dragon. Because it's a daytime splashdown, you probably won't have too great a view, but potentially you'll have the opportunity to get a glimpse of it there.
Once again, Dragon operators, they're monitoring the progress of Dragon through this re-entry phase. That is SpaceX Mission Control, located here in Hawthorne, California.
Par contre, c'est dommage, ils n'ont pas d'image.
Resource engineer is seated. That person is the voice that we have heard multiple times and will continue to hear as the primary point of contact to the crew on board Dragon Freedom. We will also hear the voice of Commander Nick Hague. Basically, after we hear the core communicate something, we will hear Nick Hague indicate that they heard the message well, some sort of recognition that the message was received.
And if you joined us yesterday for our coverage during the undocking, we were communicating through something that's called a big loop. We do that when we're in integrated operations.
Je comprends pas pourquoi ils mettent pas les.
SpaceX for entry sequence. Report when ready to copy. All right, I've got some updated times for you. Our comm blackout start time is 2144. Our comm blackout end time is 2151.
Parce que j'ai même pas mis de commentaire.
Time is the same per your displays, 2157. That's a good readback. And with that, please report when the elastic bands, restraints are tight, and visors are down.
And copy, welcome.
And with that communication from the Corps or Crew Operations Resource Engineer here in Hawthorne to Commander Nick Hague of Crew Dragon Freedom, we did hear that the loss of signal period is still at 2:44 p.m. Pacific, but we had a 1-minute adjustment to the acquisition of signal. That's going to now be at 2:51 p.m. Pacific time. However, our splashdown time remains the same at 2:57 p.m. Pacific time this afternoon off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida.
So all good news there as Dragon continues to make its way home with the Crew 9 crew. As we've mentioned before, we are splashing down on the Gulf Coast. We have ability to splash down on either side of Florida, but the location site just outside of Tallahassee, Florida is the site that was selected today due to best recovery conditions. And as Sandra mentioned before, weather is always a watch item, but everything is looking great. Weather is always a watch item, but everything is looking great for that particular recovery location. So I'm sure once we start getting views from the recovery vessel, I have a feeling it's going to be a pretty beautiful afternoon.
And we did mention that, of course, this is a daylight splashdown, so we should be getting some great views. We do have a couple of spacecraft called the WB-57, which are high-altitude planes that NASA utilizes during...
Ah, ils disent qu'il y a des avions.
Those are en route and going to be tracking the capsule as it makes its way through the atmosphere and should be providing some good views for us. Kate and I were just chatting about how we haven't had a daytime splashdown in a little while, so we're looking forward to the views along with you.
Yeah. Nighttime views are also great because we can see that capsule streaking through the night sky quite brightly. So like Sandra, you said earlier, daylight will be a little bit less bright, but we will definitely be able to see the SpaceX recovery team operations much clearer. I could also imagine it's probably a little bit easier for the team themselves to do their work in daytime than at nighttime. We'll see them rush in really quickly with a couple.
Le Dragon est au-dessus de l'océan Pacifique.
And sweeps of the Dragon capsule while also retrieving the parachutes from the surface of the ocean. The recovery vessel, the main recovery vessel, will continue to make its way closer to the Dragon capsule. It is stationed a couple miles away from the actual recovery location, the splashdown location, for obvious safety purposes. So it takes a little while for that vessel to make its way over, but once it's closer, we'll have even better views of those recovery operations.
And you may be wondering why sometimes we splash down in the daytime versus the nighttime. And believe me, we would all love for these operations to happen during regular daytime working hours, but unfortunately orbital mechanics just doesn't quite work out that way. So it has to deal with the location of the International Space Station as well as where the splashdown zone is on Earth and that trajectory, as well as the phasing. So as we mentioned earlier, sometimes we have phasing as short as 6 hours, sometimes in excess of 30 plus hours. It just depends on where the targeted area is that the capsule is going to splash down. So today's phasing has been 17 hours since undocking occurred at 10:05 p.m. Yesterday morning for us here in Hawthorne, early wee hours for folks on the East Coast and other areas of the United States.
Yeah, but regardless of whether it's daytime or nighttime, the SpaceX recovery team has trained and practiced and rehearsed for all. So regardless of daylight, they are really efficient with those operations. And but like you said, Sandra, it has been a minute since we have seen a daytime splashdown on a NASA SpaceX crew mission. The last daytime recovery was on Crew 4, which was the debut flight for the capsule flying today, the spacecraft known as Dragon Freedom. And so yeah, kind of a fun fact there in terms of the timing of that daylight splashdowns. Once again, standing by for more communication with the crew. The next event that we have coming up is the start of that period known as loss of signal. That is the period still expected at 2:44 p.m. Pacific time. This lasts for several minutes while the capsule is making its way through the Earth's atmosphere, the heat shield located at the bottom of the capsule, really doing all the work at that point in time in terms of using the atmosphere to slow the capsule down from its orbital speeds of 17,500 miles per hour.
Our tablets are secure, restraints are tightened, visors down. We are configured for entry.
Freedom, I copied. Tablets are secured, restraints are tight, and visors down.
All right, great news there in terms of continuing to make progress. That back and forth communication we heard was just letting Core know that per their instructions, Crew 9 has now put away everything that was necessary in order to begin the re-entry, including those tablets that were located on their legs. Those are now stowed away. They've tightened that safety harness that we see there, and the visors are now down. So with all that being said, let's take a minute to meet our returning crew. U.S. Space Force Colonel Nick Hague is your Crew 9 commander. He was selected by NASA as an astronaut in 2013. This was his second spaceflight to the International Space Station and third launch overall. He spent 171 days in space with Crew 9 and has a career total.
Tiens, d'ailleurs, venez voir en live sur Among Us demain.
During his mission, he completed a spacewalk with astronaut Sonny Williams. That was his fourth spacewalk, earning him a career total of 25 hours, 56 minutes of spacewalking time. Before Crew 9, Hague previously served as a crew member of Expedition 59 and 60 back in 2019. He flew with Alexei Ovchinin.
This AI tool is better than Leonardo.ai. You can create unlimited AI images with accurate text, hands and fingers.
The Kansas native is a test pilot and distinguished graduate of the United States Air Force Academy. Nick spent 5 months in Iraq in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. He voluntarily transferred from the United States Air Force to U.S. Space Force in 2021 and is an active colonel. His wife, Katie, is a retired U.S. Air Force colonel, and they have 2 sons.
NASA astronaut Sonny Williams is a mission specialist for Crew 9. This was her third visit to the International Space Station. She originally launched aboard Boeing Starliner spacecraft and arrived at the space station on June 6th. Following the agency's decision to return Starliner uncrewed, she became an Expedition 71 and 72 crew member, where she logged 286 days in space on this mission. But Sonny has a total of 608 days in space, the second most time in space by a U.S. astronaut.
5 minutes until predicted comm blackout. We'll see you on the other side at 21:51.
Talk to you soon.
And with that call out from the Crew Operations Resource Engineer to Commander Nick Hague, letting them know that everything is looking good ahead of the loss of signal period. We will see the crew on the other side of the loss of signal period at 2:51 p.m. Pacific time this afternoon. Continuing on about Sonny Williams, who has a total of 608 days in space, the second most time in space by a U.S. astronaut. Former NASA astronaut Peggy Whitson actually ranks first for the U.S. with 675 days in space. Sonny conducted 2 spacewalks and has completed 9 over the course of her career for a total of 62 hours, 6 minutes of spacewalking time. She ranks 4th on the list of cumulative time spacewalking by a female astronaut, and she has flown on 4 different spacecraft types, including the Space Shuttle, Soyuz, Starliner, and now Dragon. Previously, she served on Expedition 14 and 15 in 2006 and 2007, and again with Expedition 32 and 33 in 2012. She's a retired U.S. Navy captain and is a proud graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy and was the first astronaut to run a marathon in space.
Pretty awesome stuff. Now, NASA astronaut Butch Wilmore is also serving as a mission specialist today.
Butch Wilmore.
And just like Sonny, logged 286 days in space. He conducted prototypes throughout his career: the Space Shuttle, Soyuz, Starliner, and now Dragon. Previously, the Mount Juliet, Tennessee native served on STS-129 in 2009 and Expedition 41 and 42 from 2014 to 2015. Wilmore is also a retired captain in the U.S. Navy.
Next up is Alexander Gorbanov, who is the third mission specialist serving on today's mission. Crew 9 was his first space flight to the space station, earning him a total of 171 days in space over the course of his career. Gorbanov, along with Nick Hague, saw the arrival of 4 visiting vehicles and saw the departure of 4 as well. The duo orbited the Earth more than 2,700 times since September. Before his cosmonaut selection in 2018, Gorbanov worked as an engineer for a rocket space corporation and helped support cargo spacecraft launches from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. Joining us, we are continuing to bring you live coverage of Crew 9's return to Earth following their mission aboard the International Space Station, where they completed science and research investigations. We are targeting splashdown off the coast of Florida at 2:57 p.m. Pacific time. The next major milestone that we'll look ahead towards is what we call loss of signal, or LOS, when we won't have communications with the crew because they will be re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. And during this process, there is plasma that builds up around that heat shield, so we are not able to communicate with the crew, but we are anticipating to regain communications with the crew at a short time from now at 2:51 p.m. Pacific time today.
As we said before, everything continues to look good for the return of the Crew 9 team. We are about to go into that period of loss of signal. Once we get views of the crew inside the capsule, once again, we will be sure to bring those to you. But that period of time is when plasma is building up on the exterior of the capsule, generating heat in excess of 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit, so we are unable to communicate or command the spacecraft at that time, and that includes, unfortunately, video feeds as well. So as soon as we get the views back inside Dragon, we will bring those to you. But until then, we are going to stand by and continue to monitor the progress of Dragon. Like Sandra just said, we are anticipating the blackout period to begin at 2:51 p.m. Pacific time, 5:51 p.m. Eastern time. This will last for several minutes. It's not super exact, even though we are predicting acquisition of signal, or AOS, to come back at 5:51 p.m. Eastern time. In the past, we have regained communication sometimes a little bit earlier than that, so we'll probably start to hear Core begin to hail Crew Dragon a minute or two prior to that anticipated acquisition of signal. But right now, Nick, Sunny, Butch, and Alexander are seated in their seats inside Dragon Freedom. Their visors are down, and they have put away or stored the tablets they had located on their upper leg to monitor Dragon's progress. Now they will be utilizing the touchscreen displays, where the current operation and future operations will be displayed as they are able to monitor Dragon's progress continually. As I said before, Dragon is autonomous, meaning it is flying itself. So the crew stands by and monitors, and those touchscreen displays are what will be allowing them to do so and prepare for events such as parachute deploy.
And while on board the International Space Station, Nick, Sunny, Butch, and Alexander contributed to over 900 hours of science and research investigations, which is really the key purpose of the International Space Station. Now, the International Space Station is celebrating a major milestone this year, where they will be celebrating 25 years of continuous human presence in November. So if you're younger than 25 years, you've never known a day where there hasn't been a human living and working aboard the International International Space Station, contributing to key science and research investigations that impact our lives here on Earth. There's research being done on Parkinson's, on osteoporosis, on cancer research, and a variety of other studies. Additionally, the microgravity laboratory provides a jumping off point for us as we venture back to the moon and onto Mars through longer duration space flights. One such example that the crew worked on during this mission was an alternative exercise device. In microgravity, the crew has to exercise for about 2 hours a day because they're not having the effects of gravity on their body. So to prevent bone and muscle loss, we counteract that with 2 hours of exercise per day. On board the International Space Station, they have 3 ways in which they can exercise. They have a bike, they have a treadmill, and they have a similar to a weightlifting machine that counteracts the microgravity environment. But a particular experiment that this crew tested out was a combination of all 3 of those in one smaller device. And this is really critical as we continue on to the moon, Mars, and beyond, because space is really important in spacecraft. So if we have something smaller that the crew might be able to utilize, that can potentially help us venture out even further into the solar system. So science is really the name of the game when it comes to the International Space Station. Some of the other science highlights that took place during this increment that are particularly interesting to me was we had the first wooden satellite that was deployed. This is a study to see
Ils sont en train de perdre la communication avec le dragon.
Additionally, we had a couple of spacewalks that took place to not only provide maintenance to the International Space Station, but also where we swabbed the outside of the space station near vents to see if any microbes that we all have microbes on us, to see if any of those could survive in the harsh environment of space, which again is very important for us to know and understand as we continue to the moon, Mars, and beyond.
Very exciting stuff. Now, at this point, we have now entered the communications blackout period for the Dragon spacecraft. This lasts approximately 7 minutes due to plasma formation around the spacecraft itself. During this time, no vehicle telemetry is received by mission control or the recovery team, and no external commanding of the vehicle or voice communication is possible. But as a reminder, Dragon
see the results of that one as well.
From orbital velocity, which is approximately 17,500 miles per hour.
Attendez une seconde, attends. Je vais lancer un autre live.
Upon re-entry is 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. This blackout period, as I said before, we expect it to last about 7 minutes today, concluding at 5:51 p.m. Eastern Time or 2:51 p.m. Pacific Time. We right there have our first view of Dragon.
Seulement 7 minutes.
And that view is from the WB-57, which is one
Ah, il reste que 7 minutes avant l'atterrissage. Ah bah c'est chill. Ah bah c'est chill, on aura fait... comme ça, j'aurais fait seulement un live de moins d'1 heure. Ça va? Et là, on a le plasma qui se forme autour de la capsule. D'accord, c'est juste pour savoir quand est-ce que le splashdown va se faire. Ouh! Là, on a des vues très stylées. Attends, je vais écrire un commentaire. So cool. Voilà. Pourquoi il met les drapeaux français, lui? Dans le chat. Pourquoi il met les drapeaux français? Il est con, lui. C'est une mission. C'est une mission entre les États-Unis et la Russie. Et la Russie.
Grosse commission entre les États-Unis.
Non, je suis pas en mute. Fais attention, Mewan. Fais attention, du con. Ouais, c'est quoi ça? Il y a littéralement un... Je vais pas faire de blague là-dessus. Sinon, on va me traiter d'immature. Par contre, c'est bon, on dirait un soleil qui rentre sur Terre. Bon, même si je vois... même si un jour un soleil rentre sur Terre, on serait déjà tous morts. Hein. J'adore ces vues. J'adore ces vues.
Great news there from Commander Nick Hague reporting back.
We see a healthy flight computer. Expect
Ah, c'est le retour du signal. 30 secondes. Le truc au milieu, c'est seulement un point pour dire où se trouve la cible, en fait. Je suis con.
Next event coming up will be deployment of the drogue parachutes. This occurs around 18,000 feet.
GPS has converged. Expect nominal altitude for drogue chute deployment.
We're about 2 minutes away from deployment of those drogue parachutes. Now the heat shield is continuing to work to slow the vehicle down. That entry period, the Dragon spacecraft went from orbital velocity.
Et là, ils vont bientôt déployer les parachutes. Par contre, je comprends pas. Dans les décollages du Starship, ils peuvent même filmer la rentrée atmosphérique et nous en même temps donner. Oh, les images embarquées! Les images, j'ai l'impression qu'ils sont en train de stresser. Bref, je disais. Il me fait exprès. Non, non, tu n'utilises pas le marqueur.
Drogue parachutes that we manufacture here in-house are going to slow the system down to 119 miles per hour. And that is when we parachute deploy, and that occurs about 6,000.
Lâche-moi! Lâche-moi! Lâche-moi!
Expecting drogue deployment at 2:53 p.m. Pacific, so we should see it any second now. There you are getting a great view of Crew 9 inside Dragon Freedom as it returns back to Earth. We are awaiting the drogue.
Oh, regardez-moi ça! Attention, là, ça va être l'ouverture des drogues chutes. L'ouverture des drogues chutes, donc les parachutes de ralentissement. Attends! Je suis en live! Non, pas tout de suite! Mais qu'il fait exprès ou quoi?
Next up, we'll stand by for the main deployment of the parachutes. The mains are quite a bit larger. You'll be able to notice the difference on your screen once they deploy, and they continue to ensure that the Dragon.
Et là, il y aura le déploiement des parachutes principales. Et voilà, les parachutes principaux. Incroyable, putain, c'est grande vue. Tu peux sortir?
Now awaiting visuals of splashdown. We'll start to hear Commander Nick Hague.
Copy 1000.
As we heard right there, Commander Nick Hague will be calling out the altitude of the Dragon capsule from here on out. Landing in water is simpler and provides more margin against unlikely parachute issues. You can see those parachutes continuing to slow the Dragon capsule down.
And if you're just joining us, you're looking at
800 meters.
A live view of Crew 9. Just minutes away from splashing down off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida.
Incroyable.
2 minutes from now at 2:57 p.m. Pacific, we do have 4 healthy mains really doing the job.
Oh, les vues incroyables, les vues incroyables, les vues incroyables.
Ocean off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida. Crew 9 just minutes away from splashing down.
This is really such an incredible shot.
Les vues incroyables.
Copy 600.
Bon, là, ils sont calmes. Bon, après, c'est peut-être parce que là, il y a les parachutes, donc bien évidemment, là, ils sont beaucoup moins stressés.
stationed a couple miles away from the splashdown site. We can see the crew there using their restraints as resting places for their arms.
Oula, il y a la lumière qui tourne.
Moments ago, so their arms were able to float freely.
400 meters.
Ah, 4000 mètres, donc en gros 4 km de haut. Ah non, 400 mètres. Non, c'est 400, c'est 400, 4000, c'est 4000. Ils sont à 400 mètres de haut là.
And now gently coasting to a soft splashdown.
200.
Copy, 200 meters. Brace for splashdown.
As you can see there on your screen, continuing to monitor progress of the Dragon spacecraft. And we're going to stand by for splashdown located in the Gulf of America.
Attention!
Tallahassee, Florida.
Allez, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, dévissage!
Crew 9 back on Earth.
La capsule est revenue sur Terre. C'est un drone qui filme ou...
Copy splashdown. We see main chutes cut. Nick, Alex, Butch, Sunny, on behalf of SpaceX.
Non, je pense que c'est un drone qui filme. Bon, par contre, on en parle que la capsule est bien défoncée. J'arrive toujours pas à croire qu'il y a des gens dedans. La capsule, elle est bien défoncée. Hein. Elle est toute grillée, tout et tout. Alors que au décollage, elle était tout propre et tout. La bonne couleur. Là, on a l'impression qu'elle a fait un petit tour dans le four. Regarde comment c'est grillé. C'est tout noir. J'arrive toujours pas à croire qu'il peut avoir des gens dedans. Hein. On dirait que le truc il est rouillé littéralement. Bon, je suppose que là, ça... Je suppose que ça c'est le... Comment ça s'appelle déjà? Welcome back to Earth, Crew 9. Bon retour sur Terre, Crew 9.
In the distance, we can see the recovery vessel making its way.
Copy, you're in section 2 for the environmental assessment in 4.800. That is not necessary today.
Understand. Raising button.
Alors là, je pense qu'ils sont en train de...
Communications between the Corps and Nick Hague, the commander of Crew Dragon Freedom, which just splashed down 2 minutes ago off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida. Dragon Freedom has returned home with NASA astronauts Nick Hague, Sunny Williams, Butch Wilmore, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov. They're back on Earth after approximately 17 hours of a return journey from space.
The SpaceX recovery ship and team have been waiting for Dragon's splashdown, and they will now make their way to the splashdown location. The teams have been ready and waiting about 3 nautical miles away, so it's going to take them about 30 minutes or so to make their way to...
SpaceX Freedom, pressure room, stable 1.
Copy, stable 1. We see the same.
It's going to take about 30 minutes for the recovery team to make their way over to Nick, Sunny, Butch, and Alexander, who are still seated and secured inside that Dragon spacecraft there on your screen. Incredible views there of that thermal protection system, or TPS. That Dragon capsule was pristine, white color before it departed the station, and we can see how the re-entry phase, the thermal protection system did its job. Now, if you're wondering what that hole, that like bucket area is, that is underneath the side hatch. That is where the main parachutes were stored. So when we saw the Dragon capsule docked at station, it looked very different. The panel that protects and covers the main parachutes, that was still intact, as well as the panels that enclose
Ah, là on a les bateaux de récupération de... Wesh. Là nous avons les bateaux qui récupèrent, qui sont censés récupérer les astronautes. Et ensuite on a un gros bateau derrière qui lui récupère la capsule. Et les astronautes aussi, c'est juste que... Là on a plein de bateaux qui sont faits pour... Ça ce sont des petits bateaux qui sont faits uniquement pour récupérer les astronautes. Ensuite on a le gros bateau bien mastoc fait seulement pour récupérer le... Et là ils vont ouvrir la porte. Là ils vont ouvrir la porte pour faire sortir les astronautes.
Unfortunately, those hypergolics are unable to be breathed. They are toxic, and so this team here is doing these initial safety checks to make sure that it is safe for the rest of the recovery team to approach the spacecraft. They're also checking to make sure that any residuals from the pyros are safe and are not causing issues. We can see.
Ouais, pourquoi il y a des gars qui mettent des drapeaux ukrainiens? Ouvrez la porte! It's almighty, open up! Oh, regardez, là, on a le gros bateau mastoc qui revient.
Dragon has autonomously completed several steps to save itself all of the splashdown. We are continuing to see Dragon in what is known as stable 1 configuration. That's kind of the ideal configuration following splashdown. It's upright, and the Dragon.
Ouvrez la porte! Mais montrez-nous les caméras! Attends, ils nous montrent des mauvaises vues là. C'est qui contrôle le drone? Et on veut voir la porte! La porte! Pourquoi il y a un gars, il retourne ici?
Dragon successfully splashed down off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida at 2:57 p.m. Pacific, 5:57 p.m. Eastern Time this afternoon.
Approximately 17 hours prior to splashdown, Dragon autonomously undocked from the International Space Station, completed a series of departure burns, jettisoned its trunk section, and performed its final burn, the deorbit burn. This placed the Dragon spacecraft on a trajectory toward Tallahassee, Florida. Dragon successfully re-entered the Earth's atmosphere, followed by deployment of its parachutes to slow the spacecraft down to a successful splashdown. We're now going to
On t'a entendu, mon vieux. Arrête! Je me suis... Non, merci. Pourquoi? T'es sûr que tu veux rester avec? Tu vas te doucher avec, du près. Non, non, laisse-le! T'as peur? Laisse-le! Je voudrais faire l'expérience.
T'es vachement chaude quand même.
Bonne.
Pourquoi tu mets ici? Ça quoi?
C'est pour faire l'expérience.
C'est une très mauvaise idée par contre. Tu peux faire fondre, tu es au courant que tu peux faire fondre la puce mémoire qui est à l'intérieur?
Je suis pas mute. Tu te fous de moi?
En fait, je voudrais juste le mettre dans la clim à un moment. Mec, ça sert à rien. Ça peut encore plus endommager. Tu connais pas le mythe de sortir. Tu connais pas le truc que le fait de sortir un truc du congélateur et de le recongeler. C'est pas bon. Bah, c'est à peu près la même chose avec les clés USB.
Je suis pas en mute.
Mais nique ta mère.
Attends, il y a un gars, il est sur la capsule.
Écoute, je suis ton père, du coup tu le respectes.
Tu n'es pas mon père, dégage.
Si, je suis ton père.
Mais arrête.
J'ai juste 2 ans de plus que toi.
Tais-toi, s'il te plaît. Arrête. Il a pris quoi? Pourquoi t'as pris la manette? Arrête. Ouais, j'étais moi, le drapeau des États-Unis, il est brûlé. La capsule, elle est bien usée. Hein. Mais arrête, tu me déranges. Mais... Oh, il y a un autre chicken.
We can now see that SpaceX recovery team member. They're on top of the Dragon spacecraft. They are going to be working to install plugs in the Draco thrusters to ensure that none of those to ensure that no more hypergolic fumes or vapors. Spacecraft. They'll also place harnessing around the spacecraft that are required.
Attends, là ce sont les vues des drones. Là on a la capsule ici. Là on a tous les bateaux. Là je pense que ça c'est le bateau principal. Celui qui amène la capsule. Mais nous on veut voir les astronautes en train de sortir. Par contre je comprends pas. Je comprends pas la politique. Parce qu'en ce moment il y a une guerre en Ukraine. Vous le savez. Les États-Unis ils sont pour l'Ukraine. Et pourtant... pour les programmes spatials, ils sont quand même avec la Russie. C'est pas logique. Je comprends pas la politique. C'est sûr que je ferai jamais ça quand je serai adulte. Ah, regardez, là il y a le gros bateau avec ça. Je sais pas pourquoi ils ont une barge d'atterrissage sur un bateau. Bref. Et là, à mon avis, ils vont poser le Dragon dessus. Jean-Michel, je t'ai pourtant fait des cours de drone. Ok.
Copy that, Freedom. Have you loud and clear as well, and Dragon Aground is no longer private.
As we saw there on the screen, we have a couple of fast boats in the recovery fleet that have quickly moved into the splashdown location. They are being followed by one of the main recovery vessels, which will move into position upwind of the spacecraft. The two fast boats have very specific roles. Excuse me. The first approach is focused on immediate safety inspection, as we saw. They do this for spacecraft integrity and checking for any presence of those hypergolic propellant vapors. And this ensures that it is safe for the recovery vessel.
On a les vues du bateau principal qui s'approche de la capsule.
The team begins rigging the spacecraft for water recovery by the recovery ship. The second fast boat is responsible for parachute recovery and also serves as a redundant boat to the first one that makes the initial approach to the Dragon spacecraft. As we saw a little bit earlier, we were also able to see one of the recovery team members get on a jet ski to help gather up.
Ah, ils disent que c'est des jet skis.
From the Dragon spacecraft upon splashdown.
And it will take a little over 10 minutes for the recovery crew to complete their safety checks. Once they complete, the team will begin preparing Dragon to be lifted, and as you see, they are preparing for that to take place at this point. As part of the preparation for this lift, one member of the recovery team has climbed on top of the spacecraft already, so they can attach Dragon's hoist rings and connect to the lifting lines. It will take us less than an hour to raise Dragon to the recovery boat and remove the crew from the spacecraft. After medical checkouts, the crew will return to land within 4 hours by helicopter. And if no additional medical assistance is needed, the crew will board a waiting NASA plane and depart for Houston.
Ouais, ils disent que ça va prendre plus d'1 heure pour les extraire de la capsule. Pourquoi autant de temps? Bon bah les gars, je ferai un recap de la mission Crew 9. Même si j'étais pas là pour voir le décollage, mais au moins j'étais là pour voir l'atterrissage. Et franchement là, attends, il y a combien de... 58 minutes. Bah, je vais vous mettre l'écran de fin à 1h, pile. Vu que j'ai rien d'autre à faire, vu que je vais pas quand même attendre 1h avant de pouvoir voir juste des astronautes sortir d'une capsule quand même. Oh là, oh le micro.
Awesome. So splashdown, Sandra, was nothing short of spectacular. We are transitioning the forward link.
Attends, je vois l'un des astronautes. Ils sont en train d'extraire l'équipage. Et pourquoi ils ne montent pas ça? J'ai vu un astronaute sortir, je vous jure.
Letting us know that we'll have about a 5-minute period where we won't be able to hear from the crew. So please go ahead, tell us how was the view from the recovery vessel.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was mentioning earlier, splashdown was nothing short of spectacular. And we were
Attends une seconde, ce bateau-là, c'était pas un bateau qui était utilisé pour les toutes premières versions du Starship, celle qui devait atterrir sur des barges en mer, même si cette idée a été annulée.
We then tracked Dragon all the way down as it slowly propelled into the ocean. And I think I speak for all of us on the ship when I say a new core memory was made today, and we are looking forward to having Crew 9 on board with us a little later.
Tiens, le gars il est en train de méditer. Capsule, pas capsule. Tel il a raison. Non, j'avais... non mais vraiment, le gars il est vraiment en train de méditer. Il est assis au calme sur la capsule.
So we've had optimal conditions for splashdown, and today it is sunny and 63 degrees outside right now with clear skies, light wind.
Et ils sont en train de fixer des cordes, à mon avis, pour l'amener. Enfin, c'est ici que la vidéo doit commencer.
It certainly looks like a beautiful day. Can you tell us a little bit about the journey of the recovery forces to get to this point?
Sure. So one unique aspect of this recovery was the onboard training on station conducted for Butch and Sunny to ensure they were ready to return on a Dragon spacecraft. That training covered all aspects of their return, including nominal and contingency departures, deorbit burns, splashdown, and post-landing off, which is what this team is preparing for now. As for the recovery teams themselves, we started the day taking a series of helicopters out to the vessel, and as standard, the recovery director and crew support teams were on that first helicopter out and took the time to get everything prepared on the ship. About 2 hours before splashdown, they deployed those fast boats and jet skis into the water. I was actually on the second helicopter out, and we were on the vessel about an hour and a half before splashdown.
Bon bah les gars, je pense qu'on en a fini là. Je vais pas quand même attendre 1h juste pour voir des astronautes en train de se faire extraire d'une capsule. Donc je vais vous laisser là. Je vais faire un recap sur le vol de Crew 9 qui sortira dans quelques jours. N'oubliez pas d'aller venir me voir sur mon live sur Among Us demain. Et au revoir.
Yeah, Kate, so coming up next,
will be used to